Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick. I support women to bloom in midlife with creativity and spiritual life coaching. I'm your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. Before this episode with Agatha Brewer, I invite you to download my midlife meditation I created for you to remind you that your life is a precious gift. And reaching midlife is a milestone worth celebrating and marking an exciting start of a new chapter. Also, if you haven't already, here's your invitation to tune into Her Inspirations, which is the sister podcast to this title. And in each solo episode, I aim to inspire midlife women to recognize and embrace the wisdom of our experience and allow this next season of your life to be the most free and fruitful. Midlife is your time to bloom. All the links are in the show notes below. My guest this week is Agatha Brewer. She is a business coach who works with new and aspiring entrepreneurs to help them launch their businesses and get more clarity in their marketing so they can start to attract clients. Her clients are women who have done the corporate thing but now want to build a business that not only helps them make a bigger impact in the world, but also allows them to live more intentionally and with more freedom. She also hosts the Intentional Solopreneur podcast, where she talks about how to build an intentional marketing strategy and business that aligns with your personality and strengths. During our conversation, Agatha shares about leaving 19 years of corporate work after seeing multiple signs from the universe that coaching was her true calling, and also the ways to work and live in alignment that naturally attracts those dream clients. So as always, I begin by asking my guest. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
Yeah, for me, I feel it in a couple of different situations in my life, but the one I'll talk about is after I meditate or even during meditation. It's something that I've made a point to do in my life, especially now as I do my business full time. It's something that I like because of what I do as a coach. I have to protect my energy. I have to be really present with people. And so meditation is good for me, like as a person, but it's also good for me as a business owner. It's something I've done for probably 18 years now. I wasn't always super regular with it, but now I am. I meditate every morning. And it's a time for me to just be, to not have to do anything, to not have to accomplish or achieve. It's just a time for me to be quiet. It's a time to think, to basically not think, but watch my thoughts and see what's coming up and actually quiet those thoughts over time. The more you meditate, I feel the easier it is to slip into meditation. You don't have to try as hard. And I do a style of meditation that's very well known, transcendental meditation. So it's like a pretty easy way to get into it. You don't have to even have an app or anything like that. You're just there. And it doesn't have to be something that takes forever. I only meditate 10 to 15 minutes every morning. And that's when I feel when I'm done. And even during the meditations, I can be watching my thoughts. And sometimes there's days where there's a lot of them. And then there's days where it's not so noisy. But I always make it a point to finish my meditation and go look out a window and go look at nature, because it's the other place. If I was going to answer this question with two answers, it would be in my garden, because I'm a big gardener. So I feel that resonance there. I feel like I can do anything, and I also don't have to do anything. I'm just being. And I think in this world, there's so much noise, there's so much chaos that we all need a way to be able to do that, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, whether it's exercise, whether it's walking in nature. There's something for everyone, because I know meditation isn't for everyone. But yeah, that's where I feel the most spiritually aligned, the most peaceful, and the most grounded.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that, Agatha. And before we go deeper into the conversation, I just want to give you a moment to share about who you are and the work that you're doing, and maybe even how you got there.
Yeah, so first I'll start with what I do, and because my story is kind of involved. So I'm a business coach and also a marketing coach, because my experience is in marketing. So I'm a business coach for early stage entrepreneurs, and specifically solopreneurs and service-based business owners. So I typically work with women. That's not to say I couldn't work with a man. I have in the past, but that's typically who I work with. And I am helping them get really clear on what they want to build in their business. So I'm helping women launch their business, but I'm also helping them get really clear on their marketing, because that's such a big part of launching your business, and understanding how you're going to bring your message out to the world, how you're going to start attracting clients. Because yes, you need clarity to launch, but you also need clarity to move forward in your business. And so what I like to do, and it's a lot of things that I do, so it's hard to sum up in like one sentence, but I help people really get aligned with their personality, their strengths, their values, and build an intentional business. Mm. And then around my story, so just so your listeners know, I worked in corporate marketing for 19 years. So I have a pretty broad, diverse background in marketing. But there was a time, and throughout my journey, multiple times, I won't go through all of it because it would take the entire podcast. But in 2013, I remember I was 30 years old. I'm 41 now. And I had just been promoted to a director of marketing position at a software company here in Atlanta. And I was managing a team. I was in charge of the company's entire budget and for marketing and their plan. It was a little bit of stress. Being so young, being in charge of this company's basically brand and reputation and their marketing. It was a good time. On the one hand, because I was excited to be able to do this and to be able to manage a team for the first time and to be able to, make my mark. But at the same time, I knew that there was something missing. I knew that something felt off, and I didn't really know what that was at the time, because I had grown up two Polish immigrant parents who my whole life I heard, and I'm not blaming them, because they did believe in the American dream, and they believed in, hard work, and, you go to work and you work for a long period of time, and then eventually you make something of yourself. And so they were following that script. But even in that, in my childhood, my parents also own a business, and recently they retired recently, but throughout my life, I also saw them as business owners. So I kind of had two paradigms that I was looking at. So I knew that there was something off, and I didn't know what that was. And so also at the time, I had just left a relationship that was just not a fit for me. I went into it, I had some relationship troubles because I lived in New York before that. And I had this story that it was hard to find somebody in New York. And, people would agree with that. And so I came to Atlanta thinking, oh, it'll be so much easier. And it wasn't. And so I had found someone online, and it just wasn't the right relationship for me. So I was dealing with that. And so what I ended up doing is I booked myself in for a personal development retreat in Florida with a well-known, if I mention his name, I'll just say Matthew Hussey. There's a relationship coach who is a celebrity at this point. At the time, he was starting that. And so I did this retreat where you basically design your life. And this was the first time where I was exposed to a lot of different ideas. I had been always interested in personal development. I read a lot of books. I listened to different things, but this was the first time where like I really saw it in practice. And we spent about a week with a group of women at a retreat, really going into all of the different aspects of our life. What do I want to do for my relationship? What do I want to do for my career? What do I want to do for my health? And that was the first time I actually have a journal behind me where I wrote down the words life coach ? In my journal that I got. And then, I had all these plans of what I would do with that information and what kind of business I would start. That wasn't the only thing I was thinking about. There were other things that I was interested in. But as life goes, you come back, you have all these amazing plans, and sometimes you go back to your old patterns because they feel comfortable, they feel safe, you have financial security. That was a big one for me. And so that journal kind of, like I had started some things on the relationship side, and I actually did meet my husband not long after that. But I wasn't as focused on the career and work. And then I will mention, because I want to be honest with your audience, like in corporate and especially in tech, you are only as valuable as your company thinks you are at the time. And so what happened is I went through multiple layoffs, and I had always worked really hard. And I was always, I thought, a loyal, very, ambitious employee, working my way up the ladder. But it didn't matter because if you're not meeting if the company is not meeting like their numbers, then decisions have to be made. And for some reason I was cut, and not just me, obviously other people as well. And so this happened several times, and I started questioning, why am I doing this? Why am I going back to a system that doesn't really value me in the way that I feel I should be valued? And so it took some time because I'm stubborn and I'm loyal. And eventually, 7 years later, I decided finally, and there were some other things that were going on. So I had some health challenges, and I did this program called DNRS that's based in neuroplasticity, this belief that you can change your brain and you can rewire your brain. And so I learned for the first time what a limiting belief was. I had kind of understood that, but when I really learned what a limiting belief was, and that I had all these limiting beliefs about what I was capable of, what I could do in my life, what my career could look like, then I was like, no, I'm going to make a change. And so in 2019, I decided to become certified as a coach. And I went through a long process of learning and getting my certification. And then I started working with people. And I did that alongside my corporate career, which was another thing. Like I had this belief that wasn't even possible. Like you can only do one or the other. And I started coaching people, and I know this story can keep going, so I won't go too much into it, but basically that's how I found my niche. That's how I found the women that I do want to serve, because I was trained as a general life coach, so I could really coach on any topic, but I melded the knowledge I had in coaching with my marketing background and with my corporate background, because that's where I felt I could really serve women the most, because women who start businesses don't typically have a marketing background. And so I was helping them in that area.
Cool. No, I don't think that was too long at all. Sometimes it's necessary to like add in certain details, so we can totally see where you come from and where you arrived at. So it was perfect length as well. Well, the reason that I wanted to have this conversation with you is many of the listeners are at that stage, especially like the listeners that I tend to coach, which are midlife women, where they get to a stage in life where they're feeling that there's something more that they can do or they want to do. And oftentimes that expresses itself as some sort of business. And then with the way that the world is today, we have the opportunity to actually put our message out there. But then how do we do that? And especially if you're coming from or you have a business that you believe is, more spiritual than maybe where you come from, that you want to really be able to communicate that authenticity or the clarity, or be very clear about who you are and who it is that you're speaking to. And that's oftentimes where people get stuck. I know that I have experienced that unstuck with myself, which is why I have a coach to help me do exactly those things, because sometimes you need that additional brain. And also because social media gets used for so many different things. It's like the wide, wide west, really. And it's, do you want to be adding to the noise, or do you want to be putting out something there that seems right and authentic to you? So when somebody comes to you and they're at maybe at the beginning or the early stages of their business, and they want to get clarity around their messaging and then decide how they're going to communicate that, what are the things that they need to be thinking about so that you can best serve them to get it right and then go forward and put themselves out there if they're choosing to do it that way, because obviously it's not the only way.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is also something, I'm going to be honest, I struggled with myself when I was starting my business, and even with a marketing background of like at that time 15 years. So I want to like normalize that for people, because marketing and messaging and all that, it's complicated, and it's not as easy as you might think. Oh, I just put my message out, I'll get clients. Like, it's not that easy. You have to be really clear about exactly who you work with. And, you know, there's different schools of thought. Some people say you don't need a niche, and other people say you do. I kind of lean towards you do need a niche, because when I didn't have one, I was kind of scattered all over the place. And yeah, people still came to me, but they weren't necessarily the quality of like clients that I want to work with. And that's fine. That's more general life coaching. But if you're trying to, you know, impact the world in some way, you need a little bit more than that. And so, first of all, when women come to me, usually, and it's funny that as a coach, I can see somebody's potential before they can even see it. And I think that's like one of the beautiful things about being a coach, is like you can see how powerful, how capable somebody is, and they don't even feel it yet. Like they may kind of underneath the layers feel that, but it hasn't like blossomed yet. And you help bring that confidence out of them. So when women come to me, usually they are powerful. They have accomplished a lot in their lives. In the corporate world, doesn't have to be the corporate world. It could be in a different setting, but in their career. So they are capable, but they still come to me feeling confused, overwhelmed, fearful. They want to start this business, but they're not 100% sure how they're going to do that. And what tends to happen is they have a big vision already, but it hasn't been clarified. It hasn't been written down. It's in their head. And so what I'm helping them do is get that out of their head and onto paper or onto like a computer so that they can actually see what they're trying to build. And the other thing is that what tends to happen is we have big visions, like we want to change the world. But in order to change the world, you have to break that down. And you can't do that in 1 year. Like you could, you'd be really lucky, but you have to step back and say, okay, what can I accomplish in the next couple of months? And that's what I do in the first call that I have, outside of a consult call. Like the first call when I work with somebody is I do a vision call. And in that vision call, it's 90 minutes long, and it's a little bit longer than the typical calls that I do on purpose, because we're looking at what are you trying to create in the world? What is your business going to look like? And that's everything from, your business model, because your business model impacts how you live your life on a daily basis. And if that's not aligned with how you want to show up in the world, and that's going to create friction. It's also, what is the bigger purpose behind my business? I'm not just creating this business to create a business and to make money. There's something else I'm trying to do in the world. Maybe I'm trying to help women or help people or help even organizations, or, there's some bigger thing that you're trying to do in the world. And everyone that I work with in some way is a purpose-driven business. And that's who I'm like drawn to, because then, if I help somebody make a bigger purpose in their life, it's a ripple effect. And so I kind of talked about like, what kind of impact am I trying to create in the world? And all of these questions, especially this impact one, like this actually helps you with your marketing. This helps you with your messaging, because if you're clear on what I'm trying to do, then you can put that in your marketing, put that on your, in your bio and places like that. And then, so in the vision, you do also want to think about like, what specific goals do I want to create in the next couple months, so that you have like, a plan and things that you're working towards. Now, will those things happen in that time frame? Who knows? But that's your like guidepost, and that's what you're working towards. And then looking at like, where am I now? Where do I want to be? What's the gap? Because that's important to kind of level set for me to know as a coach, like, are they capable of doing these things right now, or there's other things that they need to learn to understand in order to be able to hit those goals. And then finally, the last one is like, what are the obstacles that may come up in building my business? And these could be perceived obstacles, or they could be real obstacles, because a lot of times it's our mindset that's actually stopping us from moving forward. And then there's real things, like, for example, the pandemic, like that. I actually started coaching right before the pandemic hit, and I worked with some business owners, and they had to change their entire business model because they were doing things in person, and that wasn't going to work anymore. So they had to like make a huge pivot. So those are just some of the questions that I, ask people. But then throughout the time that we work together, it's more about aligning, okay, I have my vision now, but aligning my marketing and my business to me, to my strengths, to my personality, because, social media may work for somebody and it may really not work for somebody else. Every marketing channel that's out there is geared towards different personality types, towards different strengths. And if you try to copy somebody else's business and the way that they run it, you're most likely not going to like that unless you're exactly like them. And it's not going to work well for you. So a lot of times it's breaking down some beliefs about what I need to be doing in my business in order to be able to grow it. And that comes through multiple conversations. It's not just in that initial vision call. And especially now, a lot of times women, they think they want to do social media, and then they realize, actually, no, that leads to burnout. I want to do this marketing channel instead. And so helping them actually make that happen. So hopefully I answered your question. I know there were a lot of different things I said.
No, you absolutely did. And especially because it's being clear about who your client is. And one of the things I wrote down when you were speaking was quality of clients. And this is something that I learned very, very early on before I even got into coaching, was when I first started just doing freelancing. And what I was doing was websites and graphics and email marketing. But then because I was so connected to the spirituality world anyway, these were the people that I reached to. So it's always, I've always been serving within this, because I recognized that I could, speak the woo-woo, understand where people can be, especially in this space, but also because I had a technical head, then I could put those things into action, without kind of bombarding them with all the tech speak, but making sure things happened. And also there was a way that as people were speaking, I could kind of see their brand, something about them would like open up to me as well, and also be able to lovingly guide them to make decisions. Because one of the things that I found with women, especially within the spirituality space, you're trying to work towards a time and they're waiting on the universe, and sometimes, the two don't always go hand in hand. But I loved it anyway, because I could be, lovingly firm when it was necessary, and had the language for that. But I found out one time when somebody who was not in that space but knew me as an acquaintance asked me to do the same work for them, and they were still very much a corporate person. But they wanted me to do a logo for them and build a website and all of that kind of stuff. And after that experience, I realized, I do have a niche client, because I just took it for granted that I always work with the same people. And I didn't realize that not everyone is your client. Not everyone is going to understand that you work. And even simple things like being a contractor was, for me, that if I gave you a quote, then I requested 50% of that prior to even starting any work. I needed to know that you were all in, because for me, if I'm not working then on something, then I need to kind of figure out where I'm going to kind of plug that income gap. I can't do it on the basis of, we'll pay you when you're done. I'm not a big corporation. Like, things work completely differently. And even that conversation was really very difficult for them to try and understand where I was coming from and why I needed that, and then their lack of faith in that whole kind of thing as well. So that really was a learning curve for me. I mean, we managed to make it through, and I remember trying to so often talk my way out of the whole project, because I'm like, maybe I don't think I don't think you're the right person. Maybe we're working in different ways, and trying to let go of the situation. And they were just always coming at me. So that was very much about the quality of, understanding the quality of clients. And so how do you highlight to somebody like how they can really feel into what constitutes a quality client, or how to attract a quality client, and then also having the faith that sometimes you're better off saying no to a project than saying yes, based on the fact that, it can help you because there's an income there, but the stress that it will create will actually not be worth a penny of what you get in. Like, how do you work with that?
Yeah, and I'll use examples from my own business because that's the easiest to talk about. I also have to, be careful with confidentiality because of, as a coach. But basically, as I got clearer in who I work with, it was easier for me to make sure that people got the clarity of what are the values that I'm looking for in my client. And, I work with coaches, but it's not just coaches. I work with consultants. I work with other service-based business owners. So as a coach, for me, I have to be very clear in the first initial conversations in my marketing that I am a coach, that I am not going to tell you what to do in your business. I am not a consultant. Like, that's what I tend to run into, is people saying they want to coach and then 2 minutes in saying, oh, what advice can you give me? And like, that's not how I operate. I don't feel that that's helpful for people, because a lot of people are just want to be told what to do. And that totally does not align with what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to empower people to make their own decisions. I'm trying to guide them, of course, but at the same time, it's really helping clients get into their intuition and listening to their own wisdom, and not relying on their coach to make the decisions for them. So like, that's a big thing in my own business that I still run into, but I do not take those clients. And I can pretty quickly hear if the questions people ask me or the things they talk about, like, I can tell when it's off. And so you have to be strong enough to know that that is not a client for me. And I, in the past, when I wanted to make some money, I may have taken somebody like that on, even if there was a red flag. And I was like, oh, maybe they'll grow out of that. And they didn't. And so I had to fire people in the past. And, it's like a small number. So you have to learn that through yourself. But I think that's why it's so important to get that clarity in the beginning of who do I want to work with, who is a fit and who is not a fit. And even in your marketing, I've taken, I, of course, work with business coaches myself, too, because I believe in coaching. And I've taken courses, I won't mention the name, but there's a coach who basically says, and this is opposite of what most business coaches say, where they talk about, talking about pain points and, using certain language to get into somebody's head and make them see that they're a client for you or a potential client. But this coach that I worked with, I did one of her, group programs. She was like, no, actually don't talk about those pain points, because then you're going to attract that, and you're going to attract somebody who's overwhelmed, confused. And so there's a balance. Like, you do have to talk about some pain points in your marketing so that people understand that they're at that space and you can help them, but you don't want to go overboard, because if you go overboard, then you're going to keep attracting people who are not a fit. And I did run into that in the early days because I listened to bad advice. And even as a marketer, I also heard that in marketing, that you got to make sure, because you want to show people the journey, you want to show the before and the after. And I kind of went too far into the before, and then I started attracting people like that. And so I changed my marketing, and that is what helped me level up and start attracting people who are a better fit for me. And now I don't run into people who are so completely overwhelmed, where like they're to the point where they're so overwhelmed, they don't even really want to start their business. Like, I need to know that the person who's coming to me The woman who's coming to me is ready to put in the work, is ready to get coached, is ready and wants a business, and this isn't just a pipe dream, like she actually is ready to do that. And yeah, there may be some overwhelm, there may be some uncertainty, some doubt, some mindset stuff that she needs to go through, but she is willing to put in the work. And so that's just like an example from my own business, but this is relevant to other people's businesses. Like who would be your ideal client in an ideal world? And of course, there may be differences. There may be some things you still have to work through in the beginning with your clients, but the more confident you get, the more I think you start attracting people who are at a higher level already, who've already done some work, who have already done some personal development, things like that. And that's the woo-woo, like that's the manifestation where you're manifesting people at your vibration. Whereas before in my business, when I had doubt and when I had lack and when I had all these thoughts, oh, I can't really do this with a corporate job, blah, 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 then I was attracting people who were kind of at the same level. And I think that takes time. But the clearer you are in the beginning of, this is who I want to work with, this is who I want to serve, this is who I feel aligned with, this is who I want to support in the work that I do, the faster you can move through that. And then getting really moving through your own stuff, all the mindset stuff that prevents you from showing up that way.
Yeah. No, I think more and more like you're talking about moving away from broadcasting the pain points. I'm hearing more of a move away from that, because when I think about the way that people spoke and what was in my own copy as well, even 2-3 years ago, when it was to do with that, it was very much about, are you feeling this? Is it that? Is it, and then it was that same thing of having to try and pull somebody from where they were and them wanting to needing to be pulled, as opposed to having someone kind of open the path and go forward, this is what is possible for you. And all they've got a belief in it, but there are just some certain things that you need to do, and it's the wording and the way that you tell the way that you kind of lay out the story for them of what's possible for them, and them having an inkling of a belief that it's possible, as opposed to you trying to infuse this whole vision into someone's mind, which is probably never going to happen, at that point in time, until they've got tired of going around in circles, and they're ready to make that shift. Something popped into my head and popped immediately out at the same time. I know what I wanted to say is how important, when you are doing your marketing, is it that you tell your own personal story, do you feel?
Yeah, I think that's very important, because as service-based business owners, or at least that's the group that I serve, you are your business. And I work with solopreneurs, so even more so, you are your business. And people who hire you, especially if you, I only do one-on-one coaching, so that's a higher ticket offering. That's something that people really have to trust me and know that I'm going to be able to help them. And also they want to know that I've been through it and I understand where they're coming from. And I've been able to move through some things in my business. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, because nobody has mastered everything. But I've moved through some things, and I know I have knowledge and I have expertise. And so sharing my story, or when clients share their story, I think that's, we're humans still. We have to connect on that deeper level in order for somebody to be able to trust you, in order for somebody to like you said, hand over the money before they even start working with you, because I do that too. I do have a payment plan, but there's, most clients also pay in full. In order for them to do that, they have to know that I can actually help them. And telling your story humanizes you, because you can write copy in a way. And I've had people, ask me should I write this from first person, or should I say Agatha, blah, 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 or should I say I? And I asked this person that I was coaching, and I said, how do you want to show up in your business? Do you want to look like this brand that has employees, even though you don't, and you're a solopreneur? Or do you want to be the face of your business? And that obviously it's individual. Everybody can do it however they want. But when you say I in your copy, people immediately resonate with that, and they see themselves in you. That's the other thing, is like, you can do the whole pain point thing, or you can do more desire-based marketing, where you are showing somebody a possibility. And I'm not saying, like, just because you're not talking about all the pain points doesn't mean it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard to start your business. It wasn't hard to move through this new identity that you're creating as a business owner. That is challenging, but you're showing that you were able to do that, or whatever it is that you do in your business. Like, when you share your story and when you share it authentically, which is another thing that, especially as new business owners, we don't always want to talk about all the like negative things, or the things that might, we feel people may judge us for. Like, for example, in this podcast, I talked about how I was laid off multiple times. Like, that's something you might want to hide, but if I left that out, then you wouldn't have that context, and you wouldn't really see my authentic story. And you can still be careful about how you word things, or you don't have to put all of the details of your ugly past in. But if you do, there are people who will resonate with that. So I think people are afraid to be super authentic because they think something will happen as a result of that, or things like that. And I struggled with that too when I still was in corporate, because I knew that my employer could be reading my website, and they were. So like, that was hard for me. But the more I owned my own story, the more I got comfortable talking about it in all the different ways, because there's different examples that I've pulled in, the more confident I got about it. And then I attract people who are similar, and they might not have had the exact same story, but there was a piece of it that resonated with them. So I think it's super important to share your story. Because you are your business. Your story is what is inspiring people to work with you most of the time, unless you have a business that's totally different than your own story. But usually, as a service-based business owner, they are aligned in some way. And then people see your motivation for why you do things the way you do, why you have this purpose, why you want to create this impact, because those things kind of come out in your story just organically. So yeah.
Thank you. What was your transition? I mean, you were doing the two at the same time, you're setting up your coaching and still working within a corporate setting, which from the conversations that I've had with many guests who have mostly transitioned out of corporate, there's almost like a face or a game that you have to play within that, which is not necessarily about you, and like you said, when you're putting yourself out there, either you're remaining in your corporate career and you're very careful about what you put online, so that just in case your bosses are watching or HR's watching, that they don't see something that could actually completely collapse your reputation. Or when you're now stepping out of that and setting up something that is based on your authenticity, then you're trying to be more authentic, but still being guarded at the same time. So how did you kind of make that transition so that you were putting out the best of yourself there, while still remaining in the role and what was expected or what people knew of you? And then when you started to step completely away from that, and that feeling of like, I don't know how you felt when you were like, no one's watching apart from the people that need to watch me. What did that look like for you?
Yeah, and that was hard. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was because I wanted to be fully authentic. I wanted to be able to share my story, and I still felt like I couldn't. So I had to be a little bit more calculated, and not in a manipulative way, but I knew, okay, they are my main source of income. I can't make that go away, because then I'd be stuck, and I wasn't ready to, like, my own journey. I didn't feel confident enough to stand on my own, at that time. And I think the thing that benefited me is I've always had a very like not to say that I compartmentalize my life, but I had strong boundaries, and boundaries about like work-life balance, and what I talk about at work. Like I may talk about hobbies, but I really just didn't talk about my business very much. And I did let my boss know that I had a business, because there was an instance, it wasn't related to me, but there was somebody who was doing that and they didn't like it. And so I made it obvious that I had a business, but all of the fear that I had going into that conversation was my own story that I was making up in my head. I thought that, like, oh my God, if I tell her this, like, it's going to be bad. And like, they're going to think that I'm not, loyal to them and whatever. And honestly, the conversation was like 30 seconds. It was like, oh, I'm not worried at all. Like, I have no doubt that you are completely loyal to this business, to our company, right? And so I think a lot of people are afraid to be fully authentic in a workplace environment because they think there's going to be these crazy repercussions. And of course, like, there are exceptions to the rule. There are companies that are really not okay with you doing that, but then you're at the wrong company. So find a company that will allow you to have other things going on in your life and other passions. And, for me, like, I don't have children. So, I always look to colleagues who do. Like, that's a whole other thing that you're doing. And there's responsibilities that you have. And like, if people are allowed to do that, then why can't they have a business? And also, I knew going into the conversation with my boss that other colleagues also had other businesses. They weren't very vocal about them. And so I was aware of that. So, like, for example, I didn't put it all over my LinkedIn profile and like blast it everywhere, but I did have social media, and I was doing podcasts, and I was writing blogs. And so you just have to be a little bit more thoughtful about what you put out there, and never talk crap about your employer or say things that they might take in a negative way. So of course, like, you have to be a little bit more careful. But I think it actually was good for me because it allowed me to expand my identity. And that's something that I also believe strongly, that when you become an entrepreneur, you're challenging your old identity, and you may be able to like do both and like expand your identity, but part of your identity kind of has to die. Like, it has to be reborn into something else. And I did that in a slow way. And then my story got more and more authentic, and my story got more challenging for people. Like, I said more of my truth. And I think that's kind of what I did. And after that conversation, there was never a time where they questioned me or anything like that. And of course, you never know like what people are saying behind closed doors, but you have to have faith that you are allowed to do more than what you maybe think you can. And like, I don't remember what the stats are, but like pretty much everyone in America has a side hustle, or there's a lot of people who have something else going on, even at the high levels. Like, people that I knew that I worked with, they would consult on the side, or they would do graphic design, or like whatever. Like, they're not just, our world is changing. People are not just in corporate and that's all they do anymore. There's like, they may have an Etsy shop or like whatever. There's something else that they're doing that brings them income. So I think understanding that makes you feel more confident that you can have a bigger identity and you can be more than one thing. Just like, you're an employee, you're a daughter, you're a mother, like, you can have other things going on in your life, and it doesn't just have to be work.
I mean, I think in this day and age as well, where nothing is secure, no job is secure, doesn't matter who you work for, how long you've been there, what the company, how long it's been established, like nothing is set in stone. Anyone can be let go anytime. And so to have that second income, or another, or at least an additional income stream, and I think even if it doesn't even match anywhere near your main income, the fact that you can see that it's possible for you to generate income from somewhere else it gives you a level of confidence that you may not even realize that it's giving you, because then you can always, put the energy on the other side of things when or if any external situation changes. I know that's what I was able to do when we went into lockdown, because I was balancing doing all of the freelancing stuff with also doing a lot of kind of promotion and sales and expos and everything like that. And of course, that got shut down. So all of the things that I was booked to do for that year, just like that income disappeared, you know, and it didn't really pick up again for another year or so, by which time I was kind of over it. I was kind of over it anyway. But anyway, during that time, I'd always kind of had the freelancing stuff with that. So there was always the two things that were going on, because I got made redundant from the last full-time job that I had in 2009. And I just didn't like the fact that someone could decide one day that that was it for me. I was just like, okay, I'm leaning too much on somebody else's whims or the way that they're running their company. But, you know, 2009 was as a result of 2008. So, you know, there were many bigger forces at play. Yeah. No, so there were bigger forces at play. So I knew that that could happen. And it was just thinking about the things that I wanted to figure out, and seeing at that time, you know, I was just starting to see more people sitting behind laptops and doing stuff. Like, what are they doing? Like, how can they be making money from that? You know, so that's all that whole curiosity, and that took me on really trying to find out what this internet thing was and how it could work. And I was doing music as well, so I could see how I could utilize it from that point of view. And it was a long journey, you know. I didn't kind of hit pay dirt overnight, but I could find different ways and have multiple streams of income that weren't necessarily major, but they all amounted to a sizable, you know, that kept me going. And also it meant that I had way more time freedom. So that in itself really kind of changed my mind as to how much you need to work in order to generate the money that you need to live your life. And once you kind of change that around, you can see how it's different, and what's possible for you. And I think from an employer's point of view, if they actually have and encourage their employees to have additional things outside of themselves, you actually find that you're going to be working with a much better caliber of person. You've got someone who's disciplined, who's consistent, who's curious, who's all the things that you need to do, as all the personal development that you have to do when you you wake up with an idea and you're going to turn it into something. That takes an enormous amount of courage and belief in something that is just in your mind. And if you've got somebody like that on your team as an employee, you want to maintain those kinds of people, as opposed to the people that need to be told what to do all the time. Because, you know, they might make loyal staff members because you're their only source of income, but then they might not be bringing that additional thing that could really transform your business. So I think allowing people to have those things, encouraging them to have that creativity, because then they can, you know, they solve problems, they see issues, they solve problems. And any company that wants to grow needs that kind of person, that kind of mind within their team, that I think would help businesses grow, if you allowed people to have and encourage people to have those kind of sidelines as well. And not necessarily that they will leave, because some people just never, you know, they love their job, they enjoy what they're doing, and they don't want to leave, but they enjoy also having these additional things that give them an outlet creatively that may not be possible within their role, but the qualities that it brings as a person to you is a benefit to you, but also a benefit for anyone that you work with, I think, as well. And it gives you it brings you so many things, like you say, discernment. You're able to listen and hear what people are saying before they actually say it explicitly. You're like, which business wouldn't want somebody that can really read into the language that people are using towards you to help you? So I think, you know, to encourage people to have things outside of their work, and also it will keep people fresh. You know, they won't just get stale or resentful within that. They'll work better with people. I think it's all a plus, really, to have that and encourage that with people. Yeah, sorry.
I'll just piggyback on what you said, because I created my website from scratch on WordPress. Like, I didn't have that skill before. I knew a little bit, but that wasn't ever something I had to do in marketing. Like, that was somebody else's job. And so even that was a big learning curve. I even built the theme basically from scratch. Like, there's a plugin that you use to do that. Like, it was a lot of custom work that I put on my website. And the fact that I got trained as a coach, like you learn a lot. And like you said about communication, you can read a room, you can read what somebody's telling you that's underneath the surface that they're not actually telling you, but they want to be telling you. And so you can mentor people, you can, in a way, coach them, even in a corporate environment. It might not be like straight up coaching, but you can lead people better. And so those were things that I learned. And then also like my podcast, for example, like I learned how to be a better speaker. And before I left, I was asked to speak in front of the entire company on stage. Like that was, something that was kind of scary for me. Like I'm not a good public speaker, but I did it and I felt more confident doing it and presenting my marketing plan and answering questions and things like that. Why? Because I had a podcast at that time and I was going out there regularly talking about things. And yeah, they weren't the same topic, but I was building that skill. So exactly to your point of like, you're bringing more to that business than they might even think or could imagine, because you're building skills and you're building your own confidence as a new business owner. So just wanted to add that.
Talk more about your podcast and maybe why you started it and what the focus of your podcast is.
Yeah, so my podcast is called the Intentional Solopreneur. And I started it mostly as like a marketing mechanism, obviously, to help me find clients. And the premise of it is basically talking to new business owners, people who are in the early stages of launching their business. And I will mention, like, yes, I have a niche, but I also work with more seasoned business owners too, because I have this marketing background and I can, but I typically work with people who are in the early stages. And so this podcast is based off of that. And the two areas that I focus on are marketing and mindset, because those are the things I coach on. I coach on what is my marketing strategy, what kind of intentional marketing plan can I build for myself as a solopreneur that I'm going to feel aligned with, that I'm going to feel purpose behind, that I'm going to enjoy doing, because when you enjoy your marketing, you actually show up and do it, which is actually how you get the results. It's not about the marketing channel or strategy that you pick, because there's so many out there and there's so many good ones. It's really about aligning it to you. And if you enjoy it, then you're going to show up and you're going to get the results you're looking for. And staying focused in your marketing too, and not trying to do everything, because a lot of people try to do that, myself included. And then mindset is all like the limiting beliefs, the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, trying to build your confidence as a new business owner, because you don't have that identity right now and you're trying to build that identity. So like those kinds of topics, because I feel like if you are strong in marketing, but you have a weak mindset, then that marketing is not going to work, because you're not going to believe in it and you're not going to believe that your marketing can work. And when you're new in business, you don't always have the data to back you up on the marketing. You have to actually go out there without knowing that if it's going to work, and you have to believe and have faith that it will work. And if it doesn't work, you have to then have the faith that something else will work. And so it's like this a difficult process in the beginning that you have to overcome. And so that's why the mindset piece is so important. And mindset is also important for sales, for example, for feeling comfortable in your own skin and not having to convince somebody to work with you. Because if you have to convince somebody to work with you, then they're usually not going to be a good client for you. So there's different reasons why mindset is really important. So those are the two things that I focus on in my podcast. And I also find that throughout this journey of having a podcast, because I think in the beginning, I wanted it to be just me speaking and, talking about something I knew in marketing or something I had gone through in my mindset around my business. But then I started interviewing other people, because I wanted to have that like inspirational story, or I wanted to have an expert on, for example, SEO, like something I know about and do in my business, but I'm not an expert on. So I would bring someone on, and that kind of opened doors for me. It helped people see like an inspirational story. It helped them learn about a new topic that I'm not an expert in, but it also helped open doors for me in terms of speaking and doing things that aren't like in my typical marketing strategy, but getting in front of bigger audiences. And that kind of happened organically and naturally, which is the coolest part, I think, about being a podcast host, is people see that you have an opinion on something, you have a perspective, and then they want you to share that perspective with their audience outside of being on a podcast. And maybe they have like a Facebook group, or they have like something else that they're doing, an event, and then so people have reached out to me in order to have me like do those kinds of things, and that wouldn't have been possible, I don't think, if I didn't have a podcast. And then the final thing that I think my podcast has brought me is just learning my own voice and understanding my own story, because as a podcast guest or host, you have to tell your story, and you have to give examples, and you have to talk about different situations in your life. And before my podcast, I did write as well, but I think in a longer format podcast, like, you really do learn more about yourself, more about what you believe in, because I had some thoughts about marketing and things that I believed in, but those were more coming from corporate, not coming from, being a business owner and an entrepreneur. And so I kind of solidified those beliefs and those perspectives in my podcast. So I think, it started as a marketing thing, but now it's more like educating my audience and helping them see like what's possible. And so it's still marketing, but I also have clients who have like listened to every episode, or like they're even the people who are working with me now, like, gain something out of my podcast. So.
Great. And I just want to ask one other question as well. When it comes to creating the word that's coming to my mind is suite. So I'm going to stay with like a suite of ways for people to find out about you, because you've got at the core of it, you've got your service-based business, in your case coaching, but then also you've got your podcast. And I know for me, I've got coaching, I've got the podcast, there are some videos, I'm finishing a book, I do public speaking, and how it kind of grows and you develop from that. For someone who's starting, they're like, oh, I don't know, do I need to do all of those things? I mean, what would you say is beneficial, or what do you say in this world, aside from just being there and talking, on social media or whatever channel you're using for marketing? What other things do you think are useful to be able to just have someone come into your world? Because people, what I find are, they're either approaching me very quickly, or they've been listening to the podcast for X amount of years sometimes, and just kind of being in the circle and just waiting until one moment and then they step forward. And I don't recognize their name from social media or anything like that, but they're like, oh, I've been listening to you for a long time, and you just don't know. So I know from my point of view is you never really know who's watching or who's listening, and all the things that I'm building just kind of create more awareness of me and my story. But for someone who's starting out, what could you recommend to them to start to get people to understand and know who they are and who they serve, and whether they may or may not be the right fit for them to work?
Yeah, and so something you said, like, especially when you're launching, when you're new, it can feel really overwhelming, because there are so many marketing channels out there. People have a lot of opinions about where you should be, what works better than another marketing channel. And so there's a lot of noise, whether it's another business coach, like the gurus and influencers out there, or it's even your friends telling you, oh, you should be doing this, even though they're not even a business owner. They just like podcasts, or they like social media, whatever. So it is about finding the thing that you are really aligned with and going full force in that. And I think you have to be careful that you don't try to do too much in the beginning, because in order to actually get good at something, you need 10,000 hours, like, to really master that thing. That's not to say you can't take like other opportunities if they land in your lap, as my business coach likes to say. If something falls into your lap, you don't have to push it away. That's manifestation. That's like the universe giving you a present, right? And so I do things like that. But I think in my business specifically, and in other people's, I think especially if you have an online business, because there are ways to build businesses offline that I would probably recommend, in-person networking or events or things like that, where you can build that one-on-one connection like pretty quickly. In an online business, it takes more time, like you said. Like somebody could be looking at your stuff for a year. You don't even know it because you don't have the data or the way to track that. And then they show up and it feels like they fall in your lap, but they have gone on what's known as a customer journey or a buyer's journey in marketing. And typically in marketing, it takes 7 interactions with your brand before somebody even considers working with you. So those 7 interactions are usually a piece of content that you've created. It could be a blog post, it could be a podcast, it could be a video, it could be something on your website. Like I have an email newsletter. So I've built a funnel for myself in my business that is a little bit more of an advanced strategy. But what I found in my business when I started, I did go down the social media route because I thought, well, this is easy. I just get on Instagram, I create some posts, and then I'll have some clients. That is so wrong. In my case, there are other people that go on social media and whatever they're creating completely resonates with their audience. They love that platform. They love creating like short form content. They love doing reels or like things like that, TikTok even. And that works for them. But for me, I am long-winded. I like to tell a story. I can't do that on a reel. I've tried, and it's just too condensed. And so for me, what I actually did is I audited my marketing. And this is what I tell people to do. Once you have some data, look at where you are finding clients. Where are they coming to you from? And for me, 90+% come from search, come from Google. And that tells me that it's content that I'm creating. It's my blog, it's my podcast, it's guest blogs that I've done. That is how people are finding me, not social media. And yeah, somebody might follow me on social because I still have an account there, but I really have like downgraded it. I still haven't gotten rid of it, but I probably will. But it's like people still expect you to be there. So I still have a channel, but really I'm doing the blogging, podcasting, and then some other things that may fall into my lap that I'm not going to say no to, that as long as they align with what I'm trying to do. So I think it's really the reason why like content marketing works is because when somebody is online and they are searching for a solution to their problem and they find your blog post or they find your podcast or something you've created like that, like a YouTube video also, not only are you tapping into the power of SEO, so search engine optimization, you are also giving them some kind of help or advice or a solution to their problem or a piece of the problem. And then they immediately trust you. And then they say, oh, how else can this person help me? Because some people will come, they'll read your blog, they'll get everything they need, and then they'll go try to implement that. And typically, they might be successful in that, but usually those people still come back because they find, oh, there's something else that I need to know or whatever. And so I've had people on my email list for over a year and then they became a client. And so again, like they're following your journey, they're following you, and everybody has their own journey because there's also been people who have, because my website is ranking for certain terms in the first place on Google, like they find my website, they find a specific page on my website, which just so happens to be my one-on-one program, which is amazing. And then they read that sales page and apply to work with me. And that didn't happen overnight. That happened because I created a lot of content, and that content continues to live online. And then people find me because of that, because I wrote a guest blog post in last November that's still sending people to my website, people are signing up for my email list. That happens. It doesn't happen immediately. So it might not be as satisfying as social media or some other channels, but you start building this library of content. And then the beauty of it is then you are educating your potential buyers in a more organic way. They kind of create their own journey and they say, oh, I want to listen to this, I want to binge that, and blah, blah, blah. And then they learn so much about you that you don't even, when you get on a sales call, they already know who you are. They already know what you do. And it's really about fit at that point. And usually there is a fit because they've been following you and they love what you do. So that's the other beauty of like, yeah, there's some work involved in creating all this content, but once you have it, people can binge it and then, apply to work with you or whatever your process is.
Mm-hmm. And I think it stands when they can scroll back and they never hit the back of the scroll, the hand gets tired. So yeah, and with podcasting, it is a longer game. But then, like you say, once people find you, they do kind of go back and listen to a few things. So it's definitely worth the patience, and it's enjoyable to do as well. I find it really enjoyable because I get to speak to people like yourself about things that I really enjoy and that relate to where my potential client is, but also just women who maybe have found either me or you and then have just kind of followed the breadcrumbs of where else we've turned up to kind of see what else we say about certain things. So it gives an opportunity for someone to just like silently get into your world and understand what you're doing. So it's been great. So thank you for being another guest on my podcast. I really appreciated it. And can you just tell everyone what you've got coming up, Agatha, and if there is the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, thank you again, obviously, for having me. This has been super fun. And that is one reason why I love podcasting, because I get to meet amazing people who are doing amazing things. And so for me, what's coming up is I have obviously spaces open for one-on-one coaching. I have two different two different coaching programs. One is called Launch with Ease, which is like for early stage entrepreneurs who are trying to get that clarity in their marketing, trying to get some confidence to be able to do that marketing and launch their business. And then I have another one called Marketing on Autopilot, which is for more seasoned business owners who are actually trying to automate their marketing and using email marketing as the tool so that they can go back to doing the things that they love, which is serving clients and not having to be marketing all the time. So those are my two programs. But I wanted to share a free resource for your audience. So it's agathabrewer.com/quiz. And you can take this 2-minute quiz, a couple questions, and find out what your marketing superpower is. What is your marketing personality? In other words, what are you really good at? What are some marketing strategies that are actually aligned with your personality and strengths? And there's 3 options that you get to choose from. So there's still some intuition that you'll have to use when you get your answer. But I think this really helps people see that there's a lot of different options and there's a lot of things that do align, even if they're an introvert, for example. Introverts, sometimes, it's hard for them to go out and market, but there are things that align with that type of personality. And you learn what your natural innate strength is as well. I'm a storyteller, so I'm an ambivert storyteller. So anyway, that quiz. And then just my website, agathabrewer.com. I have different resources there. I have some, online trainings and things that I've created. That's it. Also, finally, I forgot my podcast, which we talked about, the Intentional Solopreneur. You can find that on all the different apps.
Thank you so much today for sharing your work and your story with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Agatha, for sharing your story with me, and thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode and appreciate the wisdom of my guest, I invite you to share this with somebody who you feel would benefit from hearing the episode, and also to leave a review and tell me anything that resonated with you. If you want to connect and find out more about me, my website is carolmaywhittick.com. That's carolmaywhittick.com. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, that's Carol May Whittick, and Facebook under the same name, and also find me on Instagram as Kazmick, Cazmick. Until the next episode, take care, have a great week. Bye.